many people have talking about the work that he has done and is doing. And in my research in preparation for this interview, man, I admire the long history of service this brother is providing to our community, and his courage and the intelligence he demonstrated when faced with the opposition to his appointment to the St. Pete City Council.
Peace and blessings. I'm Brother John Muhammad, and I was recently appointed to the St. Pete City Council to represent District 7. I would like to invite you to join me for the first in a series of town hall meetings that will be held on Tuesday, February 7th at 5:30 p.m. We will be meeting at the St. Pete College Midtown Campus, 1300 22nd Street South. The purpose of this meeting is to begin our work of community building in my new role as a council member. As a community advocate, we've been blessed to lead several initiatives in our effort to improve the quality of life for residents and stakeholders in the city of St. Pete. This includes forming the One Community Grocery Co-op, the St. Pete Youth Farm concept, passing the Community Benefits Agreement policy, advocating for true community participation and city development of the Deuces Townhomes and Sankofa project, and many more. All of these initiatives began with conversations, and I believe they've been successful because conversation is the first step in the process that drives personal, business, organizational, and community growth. Our first town hall will be co-hosted by members of the community who are trained in the World Cafe conversational leadership process. We're asking you to enter the space the way you would approach a first date, where we will get to know each other, learn more about one another, discuss our shared values as a community, and build our relationship. We will also review the initial results of the District 7 survey and document ways that we can collectively work on the solutions. You can visit www.bit.ly/0207 D7 Town Hall to take the survey and RSVP. See you next week.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, my brother.
Walaikum salam. Praise be to Allah.
Yeah, I had to let that whole thing play, brother, because it just really, it's beautiful, brother, and it sums up the work that you're doing in your current position. And really, as we're going to get into this interview, people are going to hear more of the work that you're doing. So for those who are watching, this is our brother John Muhammad.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I like to get right down to the interview. So I want to ask you this. Can you give, I know they just saw the video. I would like to begin it with, can you just give the viewing audience just a little background history about yourself?
Sure. So first, I'd like to just thank you for the opportunity and you opening up your platform for us to be able to share our testimony. As we talked about, prior to this, there have been a lot of people asking, for interviews and what have you. But my spirit something was telling me, just wait. And when I saw your call and your request, for guests, I was like, yeah, this will be the space that I think I would be the most comfortable, and just the theme and the way that you frame these conversations would be perfect. And so I really appreciate you and all that you're doing to really elevate the message of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And so for those who don't know, man, I'm actually I was saying born and raised in St. Pete for a long time, and then my sister corrected me. I was actually born in Pennsylvania, and we moved to St. Petersburg, Florida when I was about 18 months old. But so St. Pete's all I know. I grew up in a two-parent household, which I didn't realize until later on in life how that made me a little different from a lot of my peers. We moved a lot in the first part of my life. So like in the first 7 years of life, I went to 5 different schools between here in St. Petersburg and then also in Leesburg, Florida. My father growing up was my best friend until I turned about 13. And then at, teenage years, you figure life out, and, now you don't need the adults anymore because you got it all figured out. And so I went through that phase. And when he passed away, I was about 19. And that's when I realized how right he was about, a lot of the things and most of the things that he told me. Grew up in a neighborhood called Childs Park, which there's a Childs Park in every city and every town. And it was, that neighborhood. And it was during the height of the war on drugs, which, led to, mass incarceration. And a lot of my friends, were caught up in that dragnet under, like the Biden era laws and, just that whole war. So I refer to myself as a survivor of the war on drugs, a war veteran, so to speak, and, still navigating the new Jim Crow. The decisions that I made growing up, of course, were influenced a lot by the environment. So I made some bad choices in my teenage years, which resulted in me being arrested, for drug possession. And then I was actually falsely arrested and charged with the gun charge. We talked about that in the appointment process. And then just seeing a lot of my friends pass away and, get caught up in the system. After my father passed, it really took a toll on me. And so, just started coping, self-medicating, using drugs, more heavily, and even had a bout with depression and suicidal ideation for a while. And so around May of '97 is when what I would call hit rock bottom, and really wanted to act out, the suicide thoughts that I was having. But for the grace of Allah, grace of God, and intervention from my sister, they kind of talked me down. And then around August of '97, really after that incident in May, I started going to different churches. Shout out to the Jehovah's Witnesses, because they were in the streets. And I had a family, Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds, that came to my house and, basically were proselytizing to me, getting me back into, my Bible. My mom, I talked about my father, but my mother, she, raised me in the Bible. We weren't really a religious family, so to speak, but very spiritual. I say it like this, Brother Willie. My mama taught me how to pray. My daddy taught me how to fight. And so had that spiritual background and spiritual beginning. And in '97, after that incident, that's when I really began to try and get back to myself and start really focusing on my studies and, getting into the word. And then in August of '97, at 21 years old, I got saved by joining the Nation of Islam, and I never looked back. And that's when I really began my life of community service.
Praise be to Allah. And beautiful, man. And I want to ask this because we used the intro, and that was about something that took place on February the 7th. So
Yeah.
just can you briefly just talk about how did that go before we start getting into the other questions? How did that go?
So it went very well. That was a District 7 town hall. It was really one of the things that we organized as a part of, the introduction for me as a newly appointed representative of City Council. And we had a really great turnout. It was actually overwhelming. More people showed up than we anticipated. And so it was standing room only. And we were able to really meet the deliverables that we promised that we would. And we're actually planning a second in that series to do a report back, because the conversation we had scribes and note takers that were collecting the data from the participants. And so we have a research team from the University of South Florida. They're actually organized, aggregating that data. And then on March 30th, we're going to have another town hall to present the feedback from what the community input was, and then begin to take those ideas and see how we can turn them into budget priorities, as well as policy recommendations that we can begin to advance through our work on City Council.
Wow, good. So you kind of touched on what was the impetus that started your community service. So I'll just jump to this next question, because this is something that really impressed me, and one of the many things. But when we talk offline coming up this week, inshallah, I want to talk more about this. So I want you to talk about the St. Pete Stop the Violence Coalition, which received a volunteer service awards from President Barack Obama's office in 2013 and 2014. So talk about that effort and how it felt to even receive those type of recognitions.
Oh man, that was a wonderful period. So I'll say it like this, and it's interesting because I'm probably on my third or fourth lifetime, Brother Willie. And so that's why I talked about, when I got saved, by joining the nation. But then prior to that, the work that we did. But even after joining the nation, there was a period where, I was really isolated, from the rest of the world, we would say, and it was really all about the nation. And so we were really focusing on, proselytizing, building up the self-improvement study group, turning the study group into a mosque. And, the message of the minister and the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad were really drivers for that. And, there was a series that he did called Justifiable Homicide, Black Youth in Peril. And, we use that as a guide for a lot of the work that we did going out in the streets. And so in 2008 and 9, the sister who actually resigned, who was in the seat that I'm in now, we met with her. We started organizing some community things, and which became later on the impetus for the St. Pete Stop the Violence Coalition. So it was a brother by the name of Carlos Bailey. We call him Super Cat over here. But Super Cat reached out to me in 2011, and he said that he wanted to organize a movement, do something to get in front of the violence that was happening and not wait until an incident of violence happened. And so we put together, man, almost like an Avenger squad, or, X-Men, so to speak, and who's who of, activists and organizers and people who were directly impacted by violence in the city of St. Petersburg. And we went to work to build out the St. Pete Stop the Violence Coalition. And we did a series of candlelight vigils that, would highlight families who were impacted. We did some healing and atonement sessions where we had the victims of gun violence along with the perpetrators and their families to be able to get together and reconcile. And one of those incidents was, I had a cousin of mine who murdered, somebody, unfortunately, in the city of St. Petersburg. And we were able to reach out to his mother and his family, and my aunt, and, them got together to really show the two sides of what the impact of gun violence is in the community. And we were working with victims advocates. So you might be familiar, some of the viewers might be familiar with Sister Naira Muhammad and Repair the Black Family. Like, we work closely together in establishing Mosque number 95 here in St. Pete. And so they took on the healing aspect of dealing with the trauma and what comes after acts of gun violence. We organized policymakers to see what type of policy we can do. And it was really a holistic approach to reducing and stopping gun violence in the city. And when we got a call, an acknowledgement, from the office of Barack Obama saying that, they wanted to highlight and spotlight our efforts, it was kind of surreal, because we didn't go into it, looking for any reward. Really, we believe that all praise belongs to Allah, and, we're doing it for the sake of the people and for righteousness' sake. And so it was definitely an honor to be able to be recognized for that work. And what we eventually ended up doing in like 2015, 16, realizing that when we say stop the violence, and it's something that I heard the minister, he articulated it very beautifully about how violence started and violence, in this country, and who the real perpetrators of violence are. We reframed it because we didn't see stopping the violence as being a real goal, an achievable goal, I would say, because just the impact of violence. And so we started saying we wanted to increase the peace, and then creating systems in our community that would add to increasing peace. That way, because when we were saying stop the violence, Brother Willie, and I've seen the work that you've done with conflict resolution and things. Anytime an incident happens, you feel defeated, or you really take it on personally, because you're saying stop, and then something happens, and now it kind of sets you back. And so to counter that, we said we were going to work to increase peace, so that as incidents of violence happened, we didn't lose the momentum or feel defeated in some ways in our pursuits. And so we were able to keep that initiative going under the banner of increasing peace going forward.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful, brother. You man, listen, you have a track record of working in the community and being able to, in the measurable ways, not just talking about I did this, I did that, but actually in measurable, actual ways. And so the next question I want to ask, you kind of mentioned it, but there were things that you accomplished also as president of the Childs Park Neighborhood Association. So it appears that you grew up in this area.
Yes, sir.
And then you grow up to become the president of the Childs Park Neighborhood Association, and then able to come back and help the community. So what were some of the things you did?
Man, like I said, I'm so full, so I pardon if I'm going along with these answers, but, and I'm comfortable in this space. So the other with the Childs Park Neighborhood Association, I actually stumbled into that work. It was I want to say 2008 or 9, as I mentioned. That's when I really started to get more involved in the external organizing, is what we call it. So in the nation, the way that it will be referred to in this, community organizing world, is you got internal organizing, which is, our group, our organization, and what our objectives are. And then there's external organizing, working outside in the community and really pushing the, agenda and spreading the messages and things and advancing them. So in 2009, our student minister, Louis Muhammad, and I love him for this, he asked me to attend a meeting on his behalf to, simply take notes. So I was the student secretary at the time of the mosque. And so I went, representing him. He couldn't attend. And during the meeting that I attended, it was basically what became what we refer to here in St. Petersburg as Agenda 2010 at that time, where it was the collective of, concerned citizens and grass tops and organizers and organizations that were working to create a Black agenda for the city of St. Petersburg. And I went to the Public Safety Committee meeting. And in that meeting, I met the president of the Childs Park Neighborhood Association. I didn't know that was even a thing until I attended that meeting. And I went to the neighborhood association just to help out, and really honoring my word, because she said, you ought to come to our meeting. And I said, I'll come. And so I went to a meeting. And when I got there, I had all of these ideas. And so through that, just ideating and the energy that I was bringing, we started organizing. And the first thing that we did at that time, there was a problem with police chases and police speeding through the neighborhoods. And so to address that, we organized a conversation between residents and stakeholders and the police. And it ended up resulting in a change in the police chase policy. But it was after that meeting where there was a group of what I call my gospel gangsters, the older women and members of the association. They surrounded me and basically told me that I was going to be the president of the association. I was reluctant. So it was a few months before I actually accepted, because I had no desire to serve in that way. But then, following the spirit and not, wanting to disappoint, those who was supporting me, I accepted that role. And so once in that role, we began organizing trainings to really show ourselves, really to learn and to show others how to get things done, how to take those ideas that we were having and turn them into actions. And so the work really consisted a lot of facilitating conversations, trainings, to be able to get us the knowledge and the skills to be able to execute on the ideas that we were having. And most recently, we launched a campaign called Smell Something, Say Something, to address environmental issues, which often go overlooked in, Black communities. We don't really think about what's that smell and what can we do about it, or, how did we land here? And so we began organizing the Smell Something, Say Something campaign. We addressed speeding in the community, began working with returning citizens in the community or ex-offenders, being able to provide resources to them. And so really using that space to be able to come back to the neighborhood, as you mentioned, and be able to serve in that way was also one of those surreal moments that was really divinely ordained, because it was not something that I intended to do. And I just stumbled into it, trying to just help out and be a good brother.
Man, you make listening to you talk and what you've been blessed to accomplish and what I've read of you make me think about our regional ministers talks about. He says there's tree shakers and jelly makers. And you are a jelly maker, brother, and a tree shaker. You're both of them. So that's beautiful. Even how you talked about with on February the 7th, because oftentimes people have meetings and that's just it. But with the foresight where yourself and your team know, here's the follow-up where we take the information and see what is happening now. Let's see what the data is showing and the responses, and we're going to move. And so one more question I want to ask you about your work too, because it says the hard to hire apprenticeship policy And then also, I know this is a big thing here in the city as well. There's a constant fight for the $15. You did a $15 per hour minimum wage for city employees that you helped to obtain when you were the Tampa Bay Regional Lead for Service Employee International Union. So I know that's two things. So you can talk
Yeah.
about that.
No, so no, I appreciate that. And the hard to hire. So that work, I was, and again, I'm just trying to keep it consistent so you can see the path. As a result of the volunteer work that we were doing in the neighborhood, I was doing those things, Brother Willie, while still working a 9 to 5. And so I would leave my job, and then come home to the community and, jump right in, change out of the clock Kent, uniform and put on, my Superman outfit and do that. And it got recognized by the Service Employees International Union, SEIU, and they offered me a job to basically organize full time. And so that was when I began what we would call professionally organizing, where I actually was hired to do that. And that was like 2016. And we continued our work of engaging communities, discussing what the issues are. And one of the issues that came up through conversations was how hard it was for returning citizens to get jobs. And so we began using that term hard to hire because that's the target population who we wanted to serve, was those who didn't have the skills, or if they had the skills, they had some strikes on their record that prevented others from hiring them and taking a chance on them. And so we were able to get the city of St. Pete to what we call ban the box, where they would remove the question on the application about whether or not you had been convicted of a felony or arrested for a crime, so that at least they could move along in the application process. And that way, once you got in front of somebody, if you did have that in your background, you would be able to, speak up for yourself and begin to share what, the circumstances were, and allow yourself to get the position. That was coupled with this apprenticeship ordinance and policy that we found where there was a lot of construction and contracting going on. Most of the times our people would come on and they would be hired as laborers. And then when the job is over, they're left to try and find another job. And so we were able to work with the city of St. Pete and other unions to create a program that as a laborer, when you come on, even if you are hard to hire, you can apprentice and get the skills that you need. So once that job left, you would be upskilled and be able to apply for an additional job. And then the city of St. Pete's $15 minimum wage, the way we were able to do that was, again, with just consistent organizing, talking with those who were in authority and those who were part of the administration. And we were able to get it done. And I'll just say this for those who might be interested in doing it in your city. The city of St. Pete and most municipalities, in some cases, are the largest employers in the city. And so it's 3,000 employees. And so we said, if we couldn't get private industry to raise the minimum wage, could we get the municipal corporation, aka the city, to raise the minimum wage? And so we started, advocating, having conversations. We was marching, we was doing all of the things, and the administration responded by raising the minimum wage for employees. And since then, that work has resulted in a minimum wage increase across the state of Florida. It's gradual. It's not what we asked for, but it is an increase. And so we were able to not only influence the work here locally, but also statewide. The campaign, working with others in collaboration, was able to get minimum wage increases across.
Man, I definitely got to pick your mind, brother. You I like that. You're a make it happen type of person, and you've used the word organize numerous times since we're in this interview, which is good, right? Which is shows that you have that skill set, and for them to even hire you to do that, they realize that you have that skill set. So we're coming up on the first break, Brother John, and for those who are here who are watching, stay tuned. We got our brother on here. He's a community organizer. He's member of our faith tradition, and he is on the St. Pete City Council. But he's one that serves our community, right? And as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan talked about, he lifted up Jesus as an example for political figures to learn how to serve. But we'll be right back to hear more of this testimony from our brother John Muhammad.
Be a part of the force that powers truth in journalism. Your support helps us to highlight solutions for a brighter tomorrow. Go to nnvnews.com/donate.
Worldwide, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Download the Final Call Radio app and take us everywhere. On your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can also log on to finalcall.com and click the Listen Live button, or finalcallradio.com. Final Call Radio, the official voice of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam.
Muhammad's economic blueprint, the collective power of our dollars to build a future for ourselves. With 5 cents a day, 35 cents a week, $1.40 a month, and $18.20 a year multiplied by 16 million wage earners would give us $291 million in 1 year. Everyone can give 35 cents a week as an investment in our future. Donate now and see what our pennies, nickels, and dimes can accomplish. Visit economicblueprint.org.
And we're back, brothers and sisters, to hear more of this interview with our Brother John Muhammad. Now, Brother John, you kind of touched on this in the opening of the question, the opening questions that we talked about. You used the language of you being saved, right? And one of the joys of this show is that it provides myself, and I love hearing these stories, but also the viewing audience the opportunity to personally hear how our guests became knowledgeable of the teachings of the Most High Elijah Muhammad and the impact that doing so had on their lives. So can you talk about how, in more detail, how you became aware of it, and more detail, the impact that it had on your life then and now?
Yes, sir. Man, that's loaded. I actually became aware, and it's connected, right? So I like to try and have that context for a lot of these things. So when I was about 6 years old, my mother told me about a vision that my paternal grandmother shared with her for my life. And she told me that, this is third party. She related to my mother how I was born to be this great man of God. They didn't tell me what that was or what that looked like. So growing up, I always thought that I was born to be a preacher. And I thank God for my grandmother and my mother for instilling that sense of purpose in me, because they told me I was born to be. And so I always had a sense of purpose. But, of course, we make the decisions that we make, and we all have our life experiences. And so I strayed away from it. But that seed was planted. And so I was always a man of faith, a child of faith. I remember coming home after, Jesus helped me pass a school spelling test, and so that was my upbringing. And so when I, again, started trying to get back to myself after, just living the lifestyle that I was living in the 90s, late 90s, I remember, and it's actually before that, when we talk about awareness, I was trying to figure when it actually cognited for me. But I remember we did an essay in high school on Malcolm X, during Black History Month. And when I did his, just that essay and that book report on the autobiography of Malcolm X, that was like an eye opener for me. That was amazing. And but I didn't know what to do with it. Then I saw Malcolm X, the movie, which continued to further, my interest. And during that movie, he kept saying, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And so as he was speaking, I kept wondering to myself, who is this man, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad? And I remember one night, I used to DJ parties, brother, and I guess this is our testimony. So, and the statute of limitations is expired. So, but I remember, man, I was in the trap one night, and we used to DJ parties, and I had all these tapes, and I put in one of the tapes, and it was a tape of Minister Farrakhan. He was actually teaching on the tribe of Shabazz, and he was talking about the origin of kinky hair and, just our history and all of that. And it really blew my mind. But again, I didn't know who he was. I don't know where that tape came from. I don't know how I got it. And but I always remembered that voice. And then in 1995, I was having a what I would call now a customer appreciation gathering at our spot. And it was on October 16th on a Monday. And we were flipping through the channels, and we turned to the Million Man March. And while we were watching the Million Man March, again, it was that same voice that I heard on that tape, and I didn't know who he was or what it was, but I tuned in for a minute, just listening and hearing the minister talk about atonement, reconciliation, and responsibility. And he was basically sharing with us what our call to action was and what our call to action is, and just it resonated with me profoundly. Again, and these were additional seeds. And so going back to like 1997, when I met the Reynolds and I was visiting the churches, going around, just really trying to advance spiritually and get a better understanding. I had all these questions spiritually, and I would take those questions to those different churches and different people, but it never really satisfied my soul. My sister was a Seventh-day Adventist. May God be pleased with her. So I went and studied with Seventh-day Adventists. I went to almost every church in South St. Pete that you can imagine. And then I saw a brother on the corner with the Final Call newspaper. He was selling the paper. And so I bought the paper, read it, and it blew me away. I read the back page of the Final Call. And one of the things that was on there was that where it said that we believe that our people are the people of God. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, what is that? Tell me more about that. And it just like it stuck with me, but I had no way of contacting the brother. And so then I saw a different brother at a different time, and I bought the paper from him. And he asked me, if I would be interested in coming to a meeting and participating in, one of the meetings. And we exchanged information, and brother was on his job. And I saw the interview with Brother Captain Majid, and he was talking about fishing. And brother, got my information, and he reeled me in, man. And when I went, I heard Student Minister James. We went to, it was actually a study group that was at his house. Student Minister James of the Closing the Gap broadcast. He was the one that woke me up, and so after that meeting at his home, he asked, if we would accept, and, if you believe what you heard is the truth and good for you, good for your people. And man, those questions that I had, the questions that nobody else could answer, Brother Willie, or no other organization or organized religion, there's that word again, could answer. He answered them in that lecture, and then gave me a whole new set of questions. And because I got the answers that I had been looking for in those different places, I stayed here because that was what I was looking for. And then the rest, man, that's when the history starts.
Beautiful, man. And while we're talking about that, you're talking about, how you said there were bad decisions that you made as a teenager and it put you on a certain path, and you were searching, and then you found something that transformed your life, right?
Yes.
And as a result of that very thing that transformed your life ended up unfortunately beginning to be a part of the controversies, some of the controversies surrounding your appointment. And from my perspective, most people running for political offices do not survive such attacks. And you probably can bear witness. But you stood strong and you were not afraid to point out how we live in a climate where being critical about the behavior of some members of the Jewish community, the LGBTQT, if I'm saying that right, community results in one being canceled or a variety of things. Why do you think you were able to push back against such attacks and still be appointed?
I think, honestly, beloved, it's because of the work. And all I had to do was just stand on my testimony. And you know, we're taught and we're trained, and it's in the Bible as well, that the flood would come, and that when the dragon opens their mouth, they would flood, spit out this flood. And that was another one of the beautiful things about the teachings, was it gave practical application and pragmatic understanding of what these things meant. It wasn't just like this Dragon Ball Z type thing where there's this dragon and the flood's coming out of his mouth. And so that interpretation that was given was that that flood is propaganda, and that we would overcome it just with the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And so that's what I had to rely on during those attacks. And when those things were coming, I could just point to the track record, and by Allah's grace, man, the consistency of the interactions that I've had with everyone who I've encountered. And, to a person, by God's grace, man, there was nobody who could say that I had ever disrespected them or had been hateful, or, all of the things that they were saying. It was just so untrue that the people who supported me started to rally around me, saying, well, wait, that's not the Brother John I know. Like, I've never experienced him that way. And they started to stand up and speak up for me. And so it wasn't a whole lot that I had to say, by Allah's grace. All I had to do was just, call on the people who had experienced me and who I have relationships with, in both communities. And we had members of, some members of the Jewish community who came to my aid and they spoke up to me. And then some, quite frankly, who were concerned because they said, well, wait, where's this? What is this? And another part of that, Brother Willie, was because I've never tried to shy away from the Nation of Islam. Like, every time I showed up, I always showed up as Brother John Muhammad. That's been consistent over the years. And so for them to start to use that in a way, it was disingenuous, I think, in a lot of cases, because when you point to the work and you point to my track record, that's something that I've consistently demonstrated, that, I'm, a member of the Nation of Islam, supporter of Minister Farrakhan. That was something that they shared. They were sharing screenshots of me, retweeting. Man, it was so bad. Well, I shared a post congratulating the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan on 67 years of marriage, and they used that to say, see, I told you, he's a hater. It was like, and I put hashtag goals, right? Like, who of us that's married don't want to be married for 67 years and do all of the things that they endure? But it was just those types of things. But to your question, I think I was able to withstand it because the consistency of the work, again, the blood of the Lamb, man, and just the life that we've signed up for, and being able to just do it and point to the results over time. I think it was definitely, what carried us through as the people.
Man, that is so profound, man, and it's so beautiful. And you answered is from like a perfect response, brother. Your work, because it made me think about, like, in the scripture, Jesus would say, like, if you don't understand my words, look at my work.
Right.
For which one of my good works do you stone me for? Look at the man track record, because often what we do is really a reflection of what's on our hearts and our minds.
That's right.
And you have a track record of serving a community, and that leads into this to this next question I want to ask you, is that, like, you talked about listening to the minister, and many people don't realize, and I can understand it to a degree because the way that how this media's, sound bites and all of this stuff. But you've had the opportunity to hear the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan speak, read his words, him expounding on the teachings of the Most High Elijah Muhammad and more. How has that helped to prepare you to serve as a public official who, of course, you govern to improve our community, but also, you know, to effectively serve all, regardless of creed, regardless of color, regardless of their gender, their sexual orientation. So how has being a student of this man help you to be able to serve all in your position that you're currently in now?
No, man, it's the way that it helped me is because it helped frame and provide context for the time that we're in, and really knowing, you know, the time and what must be done. It is because of the teachings and because of the way that I've watched the minister over the years. And when I came in, and I've heard him say this too, like, you know, different people came to him at different times. And when I joined the Nation of Islam, it was, you know, 2 years after we were coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the Million Man March. And so the energy and the spirit was atonement, reconciliation, and responsibility. And so I learned a lot about atonement, which helped me to personally deal with, you know, the issues that I was going with, the mistakes that I had made, you know, trying to figure life out as a young man, the people who I had harmed, and just all of the things that I had, you know, going on. And so in that spirit of atonement, those 8 steps that were outlined in, you know, the Million Man March, like those became things that I started living by. And I was so attracted to that message of atonement and reconciliation that's actually my wedding day. I got married in October 1998, you know, because my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now, we've been together since high school. And so she was with me through all of those things. And so when I joined, I was like, you know, this is it. And she was like, okay, here we go again. You know, I hadn't been to church. I hadn't been to, you know, like, okay, I was a DJ. Now I'm a drug dealer. Now I'm like, okay, now you're a Muslim. You know what I'm saying? So, but the preparation in a lot of ways, I'll say this, the study groups, because when I came in, we were in study circles, and I was blessed by God's grace to be a study group facilitator. And so being able to facilitate groups and create space for other people to share, being able to connect the dots and be able to weave in, you know, others' opinions and views and connect them to a central, you know, point or premise, was definitely instrumental, because that's what showed up when we started doing the Stop the Violence work, was being able to assemble groups, facilitate the spaces, allow different people with different perspectives to be able to share, being able to show, like how the minister, he gave us the mathematical analogy of 5 + 2, 4 + 3, you know, 6 + 1, and how sometimes we can be saying the same thing, but because we have different fundamental understandings or misunderstandings, we don't see how we're saying it together. And that's been one of the gifts that I was able to learn through the Nation of Islam, was how to see the common thread in all of these things, and in each creed, in each class, each color, being able to see the commonality, like the bee, you know, and being able to assemble that and make honey out of it. Another thing that helped me was the Millions More movement, because leading up to the Millions More movement, and we started doing I forget the year, it might have been like 2008, 2001 to 2008, something like, I think it might have been 2008. We can find those times. But it was a programmatic plan of action and an agenda that was set before us as we were moving into the Millions More movement. And so when I started my work publicly in public service, I used that agenda as a template, basically, for the work that we had been doing. And so when I showed up into those spaces, I came with a lot of ideas, but those ideas were from the national agenda that was presented during the Millions More movement. And so I was able to introduce them, and some of them we actually got funded and, you know, got into implementation locally, not on a national level, but like on a local level. We were able to get some of those things implemented because the ideas were good, and we were able to use that blueprint and template to be able to offer solutions to a lot of the problems that we were facing in the community.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful responses. And that leads me to this. And, you know, I can tell that you definitely are organized, and you have foresight, and that you sincerely want to serve your constituents. And so my next question I want to ask you regarding your political appointment: what have you accomplished thus far, and what are you planning in the future for your constituents?
Yes, sir. I think the biggest accomplishment and the greatest accomplishment was showing people what's possible. And really, again, that's why I chose this platform. I'm getting full on this one because that's why I really chose this platform, that I have a testimony space, because that was the biggest thing. Like somebody who, has 2 felonies on their record,
Wow.
a history of drug dealing. I mean, I was not a nice person, but you know what I'm saying. But then I got saved by God's grace, and the path that I was able to take, and the service that I was able to offer speaks to the importance of second chances and not throwing away people and not invalidating, anyone's experience, and just the deep work of redemption, specifically with the message of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the teachings and the representation of Minister Farrakhan, of how he was able to find me in that trap, through a tape, listening to a videotape, you know what I'm saying? I mean, a audio tape, a cassette tape. It just speaks to the impact of how significant that work is. And so just being able to break down those barriers, energizing people and seeing what's possible, because people had fallen up and kind of given up on the system, as we call it, and the political process. So that was one of the things. I also, Brother Willie, I had the honor of being able to vote to approve the building of 482 units of affordable housing. And that was the culmination of work that we had done through COVID and through the pandemic, where there was this American Rescue Plan funding that was coming to the city for rebuilding. And we organized the community to say we wanted to use all of the funding to go towards housing. And we had a series of town halls. We had the city to, conduct meetings where people could come in and share their opinions and speak. And everybody spoke, not everybody, but a significant number of people spoke to the need for affordable housing and having that fund allocated to housing. And so one of my first votes was on something that I actually championed and was able to put to our legislative body. And so to advance it on this side and then be on the other side of the dais to actually vote for it was something that was amazing and surreal. But it also spoke to me because I was apolitical. I had no interest in politics. I didn't believe in voting and none of that stuff, and no desire to do it. And so to go from that to now having policy recommendations, budget recommendations, and now being able to vote on recommendations that I made was one of the biggest things that I was able to get done in these first 4 months. But then also we're working to increase protections for tenants. We are moving Tenants Bill of Rights, which was approved, but it needs to be strengthened. And so I also have been able to successfully work with our colleagues on council to add those protections in and to provide greater protections for tenants who were being discriminated against because they had housing vouchers and their source of income was being invalidated. And so being able to advocate for them. Also working on a right to counsel for tenants. And so when you go to eviction hearings, you'll have representation that will be paid for by the city is something that we're also working on. And there's a few other things that we still have cooking, but I don't want to, spend too much time.
Yeah. But man, that is beautiful, man. That is beautiful that you are getting things done. That is beautiful. And we're coming up. We have 2 more questions I want to ask you. One, and I always ask everybody this question because another part of us doing this platform is because I hate the way that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, because of his commitment and his passion for fighting for freedom, justice, and equality for our people, as well as wanting to see a better humanity, it has caused people to see him differently, right? Some people love him, some people hate him. But if you had the opportunity to stand before the world and share words to the world to get them to see what is often not captured in the news media about a certain quality of the minister, what quality would you testify of, or what misperception would you attempt to clean up?
Oh man, this idea or the statement that the minister is a hater and that he hates Jews or he hates anybody, the tremendous amount of love that he displays and the heart that he has for our people and the commitment that he has and the track record that he has over the years is like second to none. And I think this idea that, again, he's this rabid hater of anybody, is just such a false narrative, because people love me. And that was the other thing that was confusing to so many people, is because when they started saying, well, I never experienced that from Brother John. Brother John has always been, and then they started talking about, how I've always shown up in these spaces. But the thing that is not mentioned in that is I wouldn't be the way that I am were it not for the work of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. That man's love found me in a trap, and how could you have all of this love for me, all of this respect for me, all this appreciation for me, but then think that I'm connected to somebody who is nothing more than a hater of humanity and a hater of other people? I think that's the biggest misperception. And if my life, and what he's done in my life is any indication of who he is, then I would like for people to just look at that, look at what he's been able to do for me. And there's so many others that are in the same category and same boat as I am, but they just may not be as open or willing to share, and bear witness and give their testimony. But I'm a product of his love. And the way he loves our people, the way he loves our community, the way he has been engaged in, so many spectrums of human life, like every topic of conversation, he's taught a lecture on it, and he's provided some guidance in some direction, whether it's economics, when we're talking about arts and culture, education, agriculture, science and technology, like it's, and that speaks to the other question about preparation. He's taught on everything. And I have listened to multiple, and several thousands of hours of lectures from the minister teaching. And that's where I draw, a lot of my strength from. And the commitment is just by watching him and the things that he's been able to endure. And so the thing that I would say again, and I know the mischief makers who may even watch this, they'll take this and then maybe take a clip or something. And I'm okay with that at this point. I had a lot of trepidation about that, but I'm okay with that, because I know that there are those who are intentionally going to try and find something to make mischief with my words. But those who know me and those who have experienced me, they know the product of what we're about. And I have to give credit and thanks to Almighty God, Allah, and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan for that. And that's the thing that I would like to clear up, is that a woman told me recently, Brother Willie, that I radiate love. And I said, wow, I've never heard that one before. But it just spoke to, again, the way and how deep, and penetrating the message of the minister is for those who are sincerely looking to do something for themselves, their family, and their community. And so I would just like to clear up this misconception that the minister is a hater and that he hates people, and that particular thing. That's something that it just, I think it's a disservice to our community, because how could a man who's a hater of people produce someone like myself who's loved by so many?
Man, and you're listening to you talk just making me think about the scripture. It says you judge a tree by the fruit it bears, and look at, what people, their experience with you. And I think about, for one, no member of the Nation of Islam has ever been charged with a hate crime. And you and I know, if you and I left this interview and went to go destroy the spray paint something racist or anything on a synagogue, on a church, on a Jehovah's Witness hall,
right,
you and I know that we will be put out the Nation of Islam, because that's not our way. And it made me think about D.L. Hughley. He said it in a very funny way with the January the 6th thing. He was talking about how they were trying to just put the Minister Farrakhan in a certain light. He said Minister Farrakhan called for 1 million men, and 2 million men showed up in DC, and they left the march striving to be better husbands, better brothers, voting and adopting children. He said President Trump spoke, and these men went to go and attack the white. They went to go and attack the Capitol. So you see the difference. You see what I'm saying? So just like you said, what's in some people's hearts, they're going to say whatever they want to say about that. But man, I really feel your sincerity, and I really feel that you have a sincere desire to serve all of the St. Pete community, regardless, as we said, race, creed, class, color, gender, etc. But then leads to my next question. In the midst of all of the other stuff that you do,
yes, sir.
When I hit you up, you was like, you sent me the link. It's like I was like, the Breakfast Club, Tampa Bay Breakfast Club, like yo. So in addition to all that you do in the community, your family, St. Pete City Council, you're a member of a morning show called the Tampa Bay Breakfast Club.
Yes, sir.
Can you talk about what it is, what it's like to be the community organizer? And not everybody's show has a city council person as a member of their morning show. How is that, man?
It's amazing, and it's a part of the work. It started with the Stop the Violence Coalition, where we started this. We were doing these focus groups, and in the focus groups, they were talking about the influence of the media and entertainment. And so we started a program called the New Image Project. Image is an acronym for information, media, arts, graphics, and entertainment. And we wanted to start putting out, positive messages. And so we organized a mixtape, where we had Smart as the New Gangster, Volume 1, and brothers from the community, local artists put that on. And then when we were doing the outreach for Amendment 4 to get rights restored for returning citizens to be able to vote, we were able to partner with a local radio station, 99.1 FM, and they gave us like 30 minutes on a Monday to talk about Amendment 4 and why people should vote for the amendment and support, rights restoration for returning citizens. And the show became so popular that we expanded it to an hour. And then he gave us 2 hours, and then he gave us 2 days. And now we're on 3 days a week and on Sundays on another outlet, because the messages and the information that we were sharing with the community was resonating. And it's just been a tremendous blessing. And I think that's another one of the things that allowed us to be able to withstand a lot of the criticism and the naysayers from the appointment, is because we have our own platform and we are able to engage and talk to people directly without having to go through, the mainstream outlets. And so it's been a tremendous blessing. Our co-hosts are amazing. And maybe when we do, if there's another opportunity, I can share a little bit more about Mr. Edmond, because Brother Jabbar is the one who really got me engaged politically. Again, I didn't want to vote. I wasn't interested in none of that stuff, but he was a brother who couldn't vote, and he knew that I could. And so I would actually take my ballot and we would do it together, and I would vote. It was basically me voting, but it was him influencing that vote, and just voting for him pretty much. And we started the show as a way to just encourage people to support this amendment, so that people like him would be able to not have to rely on their friends to vote, but they would be able to vote for themselves. And we were able to also get that passed successfully in the state of Florida a couple of years ago by God's grace.
Praise be to Allah, man. You got a lot going on, my brother.
I have a testimony.
Yeah, you definitely have a testimony, and you have the works to back your testimony. And that is beautiful. So as we close this last question, was there anything you wanted to share that you did not get the opportunity to share? If so, here's your opportunity.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity to be able to, just give my testimony and share it in a format such as this with the believers, the believing community. And again, just encouraging everyone to not doubt, yourself. And once you live the life that we've signed up for, and we know what that is, right? And we know that there's not one of us who's perfect in our execution and implementation, but, they said that we would be able to practice if we are sincere, and we're practicing, and we are sincere. And I think that's been, the success of the work that we've been able to do, is even though, we stumble and we make mistakes, and we fall down 8 times, we get up 9, but we always are sincere. And I think I'm grateful to Allah that He has been able to show me so many different signs of how He's with me and with us, to do this work. And it's been giving me more and more confidence through this process that if we stick with Him and we stick with the man of God, and we don't have to, compromise and kowtow or turn, and we can be like, Lazarus, or the man that was healed. He was like, look, all of that stuff y'all saying, that might be true for you. Your experience with this man is your experience with this man. But my experience is, I know I once was blind and now I see. And if you're seeing me and you have a respect for me and a love for me and an appreciation to me, just know that would not have happened. And I wouldn't have been anything to speak of were it not for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and his contribution to humanity, specifically the Black man and woman here in North America. So stand on it, believers, stand firm, and know that God got us.
Man, that is beautiful, because I'm interviewing the brother. You say you have 2 felonies.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So remove that salvation, remove that saving from you. We may not be taught. It'll be a totally different John.
We would not. There's no may about it. That's the thing.
No may.
There is no may.
Not.
I know for sure, and that's what was the challenge, Brother Willie, in having those conversations. Again, I heard and I'm always listening for perspectives, and so like I can imagine if I was a Jewish person or a member of that community, without understanding, without context, I could see how they would feel, how they feel. You have a right to your experience, but that has not been my experience, and I can't co-sign those types of things, because I know without a shadow of a doubt that man saved my life. And my family, they applaud me on almost 25 years married, almost 30 years together. None of that would be possible were it not for the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. And I have to say that, because to do so would be an injustice, and I don't want to be charged with robbing God. So,
brother, thank you, and inshallah, we'll be talking, my brother. So thank you, man. May Allah continue to bless you, your family, and the work that you're doing there on the behalf of the city of St. Pete with your council members. So may Allah continue to bless you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. And for those who are watching, another dynamic interview. I really love that one. It had its own special quality, and it's one to be studied. And I hope it's an inspiration for those who have the desire for political office as well. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, put the Muslim program before Congress. How can we do that if we are not involved in the political arena? So as those who are watching, we'll quickly go through our normal announcements. So make sure you continue to tune in. Whatever you have to give, this is not a free service, dear brothers and sisters. So whatever you can contribute, so we can help continue to keep this program going. When we were in Savior's Day, so many people came up to me talking about how these testimonies have helped them. If you see my interview style, I ask the question and I get out the way. So it's really the testimony of the people that are here. A brother told me he sent a text to somebody, they watched one of them, and they came back and called them in tears. So whatever you have to give, we will greatly appreciate it. Also what we're doing, because we want to have our mosque in the city of New Orleans, and we're chipping away, brothers and sisters. We're chipping away. Whatever you have to give, please make sure that you can contribute. Even if you just share the flyer. If you want to share the flyer, hit us up. We'll send you the flyer and you can share it with somebody else. We will greatly appreciate whatever you have to contribute. In addition to that, the prostate screenings. We've been able to get donations where we have been able to pay for the prostate screenings. It's a blood test. The producer always makes sure I stress that. It's the blood test. So to get this exam, and in fact, tomorrow I gotta go and schedule one for a brother who we are going to help. So if you need to, when I said we can help those outside of the city of New Orleans as well. Then as we continue to keep going, we see you have with our brother with this service is addictive behavior services, and is meant to help those. It falls under the Ministry of Health as well. So if you or your family member needs help, please contact our brother on that line. And as we continue as regards to serving the community, if you need us to pray for you and your family, whatever you may be going through. We kicked this off during COVID, but we always need prayer. Send an email with their name and we'll add them to our prayer list. All right. So once again, this is your brother Willie Muhammad.